welcome back to G.I. Joe Debriefed. We are back on the air after taking a little pause for the cause, as it were. My name is Brandon Jerwa. I'm joined, of course, by my good friend Robert Atkins, our fearless fobbit, Carson. And Carson, would you like to introduce our special guest of honor?
I would love to. I actually took some notes and did my homework today.
I don't think he knows he's here. Hang on.
So Brian Cummings, who you may or may not know as the esteemed voiceover talent for everyone from Dr. Mindbender to God.
Right. Of course, I was doing that. And the leotard was too tight. Okay.
At least you had a bulletproof cod piece. We're just going right in for it.
Priorities, you know.
It's pretty tacky. And
Brian, you've been in the industry for 43 years. Is that accurate?
Holy chrome! Seriously?
I think so. That's what I learned on Wikipedia.
Well, actually, so Wikipedia. Sometimes Wikipedia lies because by my calculation, it's like 3.5 million years I've been in the voiceover business. But it's close, somewhere between there. Yeah.
So I read that you have done 90 roles for 67 different titles, everything from TV to films to video games. Quite an extensive career, but we all know you for your extremely memorable interpretation of Dr. Mindbender.
The Doctor. Yeah, it's like a lot of stuff. Creativity, as you guys all know, because you do creative stuff too, is sometimes it's like throwing icky stuff against the wall to see what sticks and what mom doesn't make you clean up. And that's kind of what it is with animation stuff. You do stuff, and when the audience loves what they love, you go, really? You liked it? You know, what's that thing from the Academy Awards? You like me. You really like me. And this is a bill for how much? But yeah, yeah.
This is a good segue to introduce the rest of the co-host really quick. So Robert Atkins is the current illustrator for G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero with Larry Hama. Brandon Jerwa has written extensively for G.I. Joe as a franchise, and Tom Feister has also done a ton of illustration for G.I. Joe. So we are the G.I. Joe video podcast that goes back and looks at the old cartoons with nothing knowledgeable to say, no great insight, just a bunch of 40-something-year-old guys going back and watching the cartoons of our childhood with the people that actually made it. So Brian Cummings is the guy that actually was responsible.
But without you guys, we would be okay, and we would only be saying so there. So it's a team thing, right?
There you go. Well, thank you for joining us so much. I
do have some bad news. Pardon me. Tom Feister couldn't make it, but Tom Feister is here.
I get Deanna's name wrong too. I'm just the worst. I'm the worst.
Okay.
Why do we have him talk?
We're having some serious vowel movement, bad pun problems here today. I gotcha. Okay.
So I just want to make sure that you got Robert Atkins' name correct, though. Carson.
I did, because I'm a Bleeding Heart fanboy.
Correctly.
And I did the diet.
How many shows have we done together now that you still don't know my last name?
I also sent him a long sold out Snake Eyes set. So.
Oh yeah, I hope you enjoy that, Robert.
It is. It's right over there.
Have you opened it yet? By the way, have you opened it?
I haven't gotten it out of the package, but it's right in front of my drawing table.
All right. Well, just feel free to send pictures of it to Tom whenever you want.
Oh,
Plastic inspiration. It's good stuff. Yeah. Good. Okay.
All right. So none of us watched the cartoon last week. We had Larry Hama on. He does not watch the cartoon. Even when you're on a show about the cartoon, he doesn't watch the cartoon. So does anybody want to try to do the plot synopsis from last episode?
Well, in general, it was, I think Snake Eyes and Shipwreck.
Oh, here we go.
No. This is going to be very short. Snake Eyes and Shipwreck are going kind of undercover. Like, remember Snake Eyes had that ball cap on and you wouldn't know that he wasn't undercover. At any rate, and then also the Fatal Fluffies, right? Is that what they're called? Like the creatures that are in space, dreadnoughts kind of flying around 0G on their four-wheelers. So that's all I remember. Like, that was it. Like, I remember it being a strange group of Joes in space. Like, Dusty was there. I'm kind of like, it was just one of those. And the other thing, too, he mentioned is they just jumped right into the sci-fi. This was episode 2 of the first season. Yeah. Going into space with, like, mutated creatures. We're like, that just really jumped the shark. Like, episode 2 immediately just jumped right into it. So it was really cool.
Oh, no, they jump a shark in this episode. They literally jump a shark.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I have a question for our guest, and I need to know. When you got the Dr. Mindbender gig, Did you say yes before you saw what he was wearing?
we were talking earlier about. I was just happy to get the part. You know, it's going. And Wally was a friend. I'd known Wally. In fact, Wally, to be honest with you, is not just an old friend. I worked with him on a Pink Panther special in what was originally my studio that we built on Ventura Boulevard, and I couldn't afford to keep the studio, so I sold the studio to Wally Burr, and then worked in my own studio with Wally Burr. So I was just excited to work with Wally, and he was a great director before. Although he was interesting, we did a celebration show, a party in the San Fernando Valley about 7 years ago, and we had the cast, as many G.I. Joe cast members as could show up, as well as Transformers cast members that showed up. Oddly enough, the grown-up David Mendenhall, who used to be my kid in Berenstain Bears, also showed up. But the greatest character thing about Wally Burr was at the end of the evening, before we went home, we all got to sing the heavy metal theme song to Transformers, but it was for Wally Burr. So we had to sing it 3 times before Wally signed off on it and said it was done. And okay, true, very true.
A lot of high notes in that song. A lot of high notes.
So I think seriously that Wally, I don't want to say was a really OCD kind of director, but perhaps underneath his street clothes, he was wearing the original codpiece that Dr. Mindbender was designing. Oh.
Well, of all the shirtless Eastern Europeans in my youth, you were the most significant. So,
well, thank you. And I was talking. We were talking earlier. I did a con in Lodi, and the guy who ran the con said, if you shaved your head and worked out and got yourself a monocle and stuff, and you showed up like that, said I would book you every year. And I basically told him, and then I'd go home, and the missus would say, you don't get to come home like that. You're gone. You're out of here. So I'm just what I am here, folks. Yeah.
You want to be in show business, don't you?
Sorry, I missed you. What?
You want to be in show business, don't you?
Oh, is this what this is? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Put on the monocle.
Yeah, the monocle. Okay, don't have a monocle.
So Brian, what we'll do is we often will play the show in the background, kind of as we have a chance to chat, and then of course when we get to the commercial breaks, we usually take a pause from the show, and if you have any questions from Facebook, or we can kind of just chat about stuff. Yeah. So feel free to talk about anything that happens to be in the show, or we can just we'll carry on conversation, whether it applies to the show or not. But
I'll try not to be rude, but yeah. So let's dive in. I love it. Let's do that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so real quick before we jump to the cartoon, I have one question. Brian, when you tried out for Dr. Mindbender, did you already have that voice tucked away somewhere? Did it come up on the spot? Like, where did the voice originate?
Well, I think if you listen to the voice, it's obvious that I was at some point inspired to, just thought maybe I'll try a really bad Arnold Schwarzenegger, because it's pretty much what he is, right? So stuff just pops into your head, and you do that thing where you wrestle with yourself. There's another character I did a character called Dr. Sokolov. And I always liked John Hurt, the British actor who comes out of the stomach in the Alien movie. And I like him because he's kind of slimy. He can be really sweet, but there's that scary part, like Rutger Hauer looks, he sounds. So they had a British voice and a Russian voice. So I did the John Hurt voice, and then I did kind of a stentorian Russian voice. And when I got the gig, they had the John Hurt voice with a slight Russian accent, but parts of the English accent as well. So I didn't get the English guy, but I got the Russian guy doing the English guy with a slight. So it's kind of like off the top of your head. And so you take a shot. Sometimes you might have like 2 or 3 different alternatives. Wally liked it right away. We didn't read any other character's sound to it. It was the bad Arnold Schwarzenegger right away. So there you go. Again, awesome. I think it's Wally secretly wearing the leotards that influenced the whole thing.
So Philip Donnelly has a very valid point. I love how you guys have Brian Cummings on your episode that is before his time on the show. So I apologize up front. You will not see your character during the course of this show. But that said, jump in.
It's the subtext. I mean the subtext. They knew that they were saying, have this guy, this mastermind crazy guy, or you can't just jump into space without somebody weird to it. So they said, we're missing something. And it was Mindbender. Trust me.
So we're going to
change your color. Okay.
That's a great idea. Let's just add Dr. Mindbender to this episode.
Yes.
We'll just inject some lines. When you feel inspired, I will mute the cartoon and Dr. Mindbender will have his lines.
Little still
Mindbender commentary, like
bounce him around. Okay.
You'll be our narrator from Arrested Development.
Yes. Oh, so as Dr. Mindbender, as a narrator, that'd be good. I was crazy for a long time and killing lots of people. Now I'm just boring them to death. Right? Okay. So next on our show, we will divulge the secrets of the first episode that did not have Dr. Mindbender in it, but should have had Dr. Mindbender in it. You got it? You better. That's good stuff. Okay. I got my finger stuck in my ear. I can't get it out.
Dr. Mindbender's creepy.
Don't tell your kids. I'm down the block. Okay.
Sound good for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
So I think the end of the last episode was like, once again, like Flint and Lady J were trying to get out of some like orange or pink pool of. I mean, what's going on in this story again? Like I forget.
We have no idea.
Pyramid of
You
Darkness.
gotta watch these
Is that
things.
this one?
to know.
Pyramid of Darkness.
We were all just enthralled with Larry last time. So
I know it was a blur.
Brian, if you don't know, Larry Hama is the guy that wrote all the comic books and the file cards and everything. So he basically created the personalities for everybody. So he was on the show last time, and he's famously never watched the cartoon. And last time we did not watch the cartoon. We just talked to Larry. So.
There's something really good about that because it exists in his mind. Sometimes it's interesting. If you watch the cartoon, maybe it would have bent him someplace different. So I think the fact that it worked in his mind was probably a cool thing in the end.
Yeah, I think he wants to keep it clean, keep his own universe front and center.
I think the next time Larry's on, we should play anything but G.I. Joe and just see if he notices.
I don't think he was.
All right, so here's the recap for everybody that missed it. You did get Shipwreck and Snake Eyes breaking into somewhere, doing something with the cube.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. There we go. See, they're like trapped in some.
Okay. Yep.
Looks like okay.
It's
Looks
like
like they're
something
being.
splashed on Destro's face, and they had to grind it off of his.
I didn't see Duke, so I assume he's been captured by someone or something.
Already, yeah.
So Brian, one of the things we usually ask people on here, especially voiceover talent, what were your sessions like? Did you have a crowded recording studio full of other actors to bounce off of, or?
Oh yeah. Wally really liked to have that interplay, and so yeah, we'd have huge cast calls. And typically, if you work for any of the other studios in LA, some studios you can literally have an episode in the can in half an hour. Get in, read around for 15 minutes, go in, record, and you're out. And stuff.
Nice.
With Wally, you were there for the afternoon, and that was in the end one of the things that made it great. At the time, at first it was kind of like it can be other places, but you hung out with a great cast of people, and you developed a lot of communication with each other. The rhythms playing off each other were great. And of course, there was that secret ingredient to all of the things that Wally ever directed, and that was everybody did the line exactly as if Wally were doing it himself. So we spent a lot of time with pickups. But, I was talking about another great director and writer, Mark Evanier, and it's so good when somebody knows the character and knows the show so well that they can tell you how to do the line. I remember Mark asking me to do a line over again, and it's this cardinal sin. If you're not a great actor, that means that somebody has to tell you how to read the line, and that's what he did. And I thought, oh God, I'm awful. And he said, trust me, I know the visual gag. If you read the line the way you did, the gag won't play. It's not a bad reading, but it's not what the part needs. Read it this way, and the gag will work. And he was right. And I think that's great. Wally knew these characters so well that we all did what we did because of partly the brilliance of the scripts and everything that put everything, but because the guy who directed it knew this character so well that he had it down what we needed to do, and it works because of that. Still to this day.
And Brian, was he working off of a storyboard or a script at that point? Did he have drawings to?
That I do not know for sure. Wally did his homework in his office, so I don't know what he brought to the session. Again, there were so many of us who were shuffling around a lot. I got to be honest with you. I had more fun just hanging on the couch and hearing people tell stories of their lives. It was phenomenal because the cast was very colorful and interesting people. And so we partied. I guess is the way to put it.
Nice.
Did it look like
if they were doing voiceover work, they probably had storyboards at that.
I would, again, Wally was a meticulous guy. I would absolutely not be surprised that he didn't do a great deal of homework on this stuff because he was always that kind of guy. Yeah.
Just from a time standpoint, they would have had to get people working.
Yeah.
On drawings.
And again, I think we were all there for a long time, and sometimes, again, if it wasn't rewarding, it was a great experience to do. To this day, still a great experience to do. It had its own vibe, for sure.
And so was this like a full year worth of work for you, 1986, or what was the term of engagement for you? How often?
Yeah, because we did a number of episodes. I think that's the other thing about doing cartoons for syndication. And back then, if you did a year, you probably could end up doing like 65 episodes easily. And that's a lot of time in studio. So yeah, the volume of work was great. Again, over the long term, that also makes a difference because the audience, if you're rotating the same, I did one really great show that lasted one season. And if you were to bring it back, it would be like, okay, those are great shows, but now they're over and we're repeating them. We don't want, kids don't like, I don't want to say that kids get bored about their parents watching the Hallmark Channel, which I would never mention, of course, for legal purposes. But, so you want to have enough stuff that kids are going to be around for the long time. And we did a lot of shows.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It was 80 something episodes in just a couple seasons. So
85,
86. Yeah.
Yeah.
You cranked it out. I find it interesting. They created like brand new female characters that obviously weren't part of like the toy lineup or anything for
multiple times.
Almost every miniseries has a supporting cast of females. They were definitely supplementing the toys that, had some female representation, but not enough.
Yeah. And and Becca's Dr. Mindbender. And do you know why there were not toys from that whole line? Because they knew that Dad would steal the female toys and they would disappear from the kids, and Mom would be really angry at Dad for that reason. That's why.
Especially when he's all black clad in leather head to toe. Yeah.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby.
Here we go.
Oh, come on. Check out the.
I think we all have stories of.
Look at Timber, too. Timber doesn't get credit for his dance, but Timber was dancing there, too.
Timber was in Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. A lot of people don't realize.
I hate to say it, but that looks like Neil Ross really ogling that young lady. I don't know why, but there you go. Neil. Crazy man. Yeah.
And this is not dated at all with the breakdancing.
Oh, no. Zeitgeist, man. A lot of breakdancers these days.
Yeah.
He's just short of holding a can of New Coke.
Oh. That's so good. That's so good.
Let me ask you this. Is there a character on the show that you think, I could have done that better?
That would be really catty of me to say. Mindbender might say that. I wouldn't say that. There are so many of my friends who are really marvelous, did iconic jobs. Chris Latta was brilliant. Chris Latta was a freaking amazing actor for whatever his personal demons were, and was the nicest guy when he showed up for the shows. He was really phenomenal. But they're just amazing people all throughout the cast. There's not a lightweight in the group, and it was a large enough cast that you needed for these characters. The villains were broad, but most of the characters, the heroic characters, didn't have a lot of latitude of what to do. So they had to separate those characters in a lot of much more subtle ways. I was lucky because, we could be way over the top as Mindbender. So all of those deals are kind of one of those things where everybody was really brilliant, sometimes in more subtle ways than others. Neil Ross is an old friend, is wonderful. Bill Ratner, an amazing guy. The Baroness, what can I say? She was amazing. And we are all owing a lot to a lot of great chemistry from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. Let me rephrase it then. Is there a character that, if you could have had the first crack at, who would you have wanted?
Oh man,
yeah, maybe who didn't sound like maybe you would have made him sound in your mind's ear, when you looked at that character.
Or who did you just look at and think, I would have so much fun playing that?
Yeah.
Cobra Commander would be one of those characters. I envy Chris Latta's abilities, and I would have loved to tackle him. But what he did with him was so magical that I don't know. You look back at sometimes when people have redone characters that other people did. I did in Gummy Bears, I did a knight, Sir Tuxford, and the original character of Sir Tuxford was performed by one guy, and then it was performed by another guy, and one guy, they took the part away from him because he was involved in the creative process. So then the second guy passed away, and I'm the third guy in the role, and I love doing the role, but there's also that thing you walk away, you're going, is that like an omen? Is this guy,
yeah,
be really careful crossing the street, man.
Serious, man.
So, I think, and I have a lot of empathy for people who have to recreate something that came before and try to be an exact match, because there are subtleties that don't always necessarily happen. So I think the chemistry is great. Of all the characters in this show, that I would have gotten, whether regardless of, I didn't have the choice, of all the characters in the show. Mindbender is marvelous because everybody loves to hate Mindbender, or loves Mindbender's craziness. So I think he was the best character to get to do over the long term.
Yeah, the mad scientist.
I don't think I think.
Yeah.
So much opportunity with the mad scientist to just have some fun with it.
It's great. And I learned a lot about parenting from him. So, although my kids still know.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So when the show was on, were you aware of the success? Like, did you have, kids in your life who were crazy about G.I. Joe, or were you just oblivious to what the hit this was?
I had, and I still have them. They're just grown up. I had 8 kids at the time. Obviously, I had lousy cable service, but in any event, I had 8 kids, and of those kids, my boys all were Joe fans, were crazy for G.I. Joe, and so I knew that kids loved the show. When it first came out, it's kind of interesting. Being an adult, the part about the thing that was interesting to me then was, because there were so many episodes, because the toy company paid for it. Obviously, one of the things about Joe Animation was that it wasn't as fluid as some stuff. They had the cast was huge, so they had to be careful about their budget. So some of the movement on the characters was a little jerky at the time. And so I thought that would bother people. I was concerned that maybe they wouldn't like the show because it got, so I was totally wrong. And the characters were fun to do and stuff, and the crowds are still there. I have fathers and sons, I have grandfathers, sons and grandsons all show up together who are still Joe fans. That's just a phenomenal thing. It's a huge statement for the show and for the people who put it together, created it. Magic. Does that help to answer your question? I could always say only during the full moon, or 3.79, or I could just go right for 3.14, which is everybody pie later. But yeah, gotcha.
It's funny, you're not the only voiceover talent to mention that the show had somewhat limited animation, somewhat limited motion. And I'll tell you, as a kid, I didn't notice that at all because of the bombastic designs and the great script and the awesome voice acting. So, kudos to you guys and Wally Burr for making kids like me not even notice that detail.
Yeah. Well, and in credit for kids have imagination. And where adults are looking for those picayune little details and things that they think will make something better. And sometimes the fact that what it did in some ways probably made it better in your mind. There are certain things that happened that it just had some kind of rawness to it that it made the action even better because of the way it was done. So we would have tried to do it differently. And maybe it's like I watched a guy mix a rock and roll single at one of the studios in LA, and the guy at the end of it said, "What do you think of the mix?" And we all said, "That's not really good." I said, "Yeah, but it's not rock and roll." And then he put noise in it, put noise underneath it. Now it's got a little vibration to it. It's got a little, background noise, a little white noise in it, and suddenly it's got the energy that rock and roll needs. It's too good and too clean. It ain't rock and roll. Same thing. If it's too smooth and if it's too polished, it ain't the Joes. So that's the deal.
See, it's interesting because as the animation at the time, so much of that was the Hanna-Barbera and Filmation and stuff that was really limited. And G.I. Joe was much closer to full animation than any of the other kids' adventure shows. So the look of the show looked great to us because aside from the classic Warner Brothers stuff that was shot up on a screen in the movie theater where they could really, blow out a budget and do all those in-betweens, we only had that stuff on television, but again, the adventure shows we were seeing, G.I. Joe was heads and tails in terms of production value.
And also there was edge to the stories that other people didn't feel safe doing. And so it was also kind of like, if you compare it, and I'm not trying to put down anybody because they're fans of all that, but if you compare DC Comics to what Stan and the guys did at Marvel, is that the Marvel stuff had an edge, and G.I. Joe had an edge compared to what everybody else was doing that kids absolutely loved. And it wasn't an inappropriate edge, but it definitely had more stuff going for it. And that all of that stuff is what sold it, and still does.
If you had to put your finger on the pulse of what it had that made G.I. Joe lightning in a bottle and made us care about it decades later, was it the bombastic character designs? Was it the writing? Was it the voices? I mean, obviously, the easy answer is it was all of those combined. But what do you think is the thing that was so much better, so much more cutting
It's
edge.
it's like a guy who likes fried chicken saying, "Are you a leg man?" No, it's not fried chicken, but it's close to it. Anyway, it's the same thing. I like the whole chicken, baby. You know, if the whole chicken's good, then I want to eat some chicken, right? And what the deal about G.I. Joe is that G.I. Joe is an entity. So I would have given you, had I thought about it comedically right away, I would have just said 2 words: Dr. Mindbender. But
I think we can all agree with
but is that if everything's good, there was a period of animation in Los Angeles, to be serious for 2 minutes.
Please.
Okay. To be serious for just a short time, there was a period where a lot of people were trying to save money. And one of the things that happened among some of the animation studios for a period was that they hired new writers who worked inexpensively, that weren't necessarily experienced. And what they did is, I heard people say that they went to a session and they said, okay, our script writers are kind of young and new and we need this to be funny. So you guys don't worry about it. Go ahead and ad lib. We'll just use the ad libs. It'll make it better. And the funny thing about it is we would all talk among ourselves. During that period, everybody agreed the ad libs made it better, but didn't make it good. Wasn't good enough, because you have to start out, you know, if you're gonna draw something, you got to start it with a good character design. The character has to do stuff. We always teach people voiceover. You look at the script, it's like a skeleton. And a skeleton is okay on Halloween, but if you want a colorful character, then you have to take that script and it gives you some things that you can then build on the skeleton. So the same thing is, if the art works and the characters work and the storyline work, all that stuff has to be great. When all of that stuff is great, then we have something that's magical and it works. And too many times people look at it from their own viewpoint, just from their one little corner. And the fact of the matter is, it's like a band. And when the band is good, the band is really good. And that's what we do. And then we get a hit and we're all happy about it and stuff, despite the fact that everybody wants to be the lead guitar player, but that's life. You know?
So at what point did you know that the band was good that you joined?
I think that I knew that I should have known that the band was good when I went home and I saw my kids addicted to the show. Okay.
Yeah.
I was really busy at the time. And again, I thought that Wuzzles was going to be the hottest show on television. It lasted 1 season. It was funny, but it was a wonderful season. I thought G.I. Joe was neat, and it had an audience that was of young boys, and it would last for a period of time, and then people would move on to other stuff. And again, boy, was I wrong. And am I happy about it? Dang straight, I'm happy about it. Yeah,
we never moved on, Brian.
Hey, it's all good. Yeah, you may either have or know people who have the aircraft carrier, right? Which means you have to build on
that guy.
That guy.
that. Wait.
I think this is probably a good time for Brandon. Didn't you want to invite him to your Wuzzles podcast? It's just Brandon.
Come on.
Yeah, it's just me. No, okay. Carson, we should probably start the show up, but I have a confession to make. This is true.
We can talk
about it. And you can mock me if you see fit, but I feel our guest will defend me. I actually really liked Shirt Tales.
Oh, Shirt Tales.
Shirt Tales was fun. And it was a really good looking show too.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there are some. You want to find a really weird and obscure show? There was a show called Zazu, like Zazu University, and the show was so crazy that inside the flashback you'd have another flashback, and my character, and it wasn't like the Wuzzles where it was weird breeding, but my character was a woolly mammoth who spoke like Richard Nixon. Okay, and it was out there.
Really?
You can find a little bit of it on YouTube, but it like came and went so fast people go, oh yeah. I had a villain I loved. There was a Raggedy Ann and Andy show that lasted for the better parts of 1 season, and I played a villain, Cracklin. And what I loved about Cracklin is he was a maniac, crazy, different than Mindbender, but a crazy guy. But he had horrific allergies, so he'd be in his terrible, evil rant, ready to bring down destruction, and suddenly he'd be coughing and sneezing. It was hilarious, fun to do. It was fun to do. So
hold on. Speaking of Richard Nixon, you did him in Where the Buffalo Roam.
Yeah, I never admit that.
Damn you, IMDb.
Yeah, well, it was because I was. It's funny because I had lots of kids, and I wanted to be a good example of my kids. And so my agent, when I booked the part, I was much younger then, so I booked the part, and she said, "You got to say the F word, but I got you an extra $100." I was like, "Okay." So, you know about my standards, right? $100, huh? Okay.
All right, I'll do it.
Exactly. And I thought, no one will know because it's a Richard Nixon lookalike, and I got screen credits. It was hilarious. And I still have producers for whom that's their favorite movie. They go, I heard you because you were in Where the Buffalo Roam, man. Will you do that part? Cool.
So, Brian, who'd you end up being closest with from the show? You know, kind of after you guys rolled out of the studio, you had a good time for a few hours with Wally barking direction at you. Who did you leave the studio with and hang out with?
You know, well, to be honest with you, I was so busy at that time, I didn't leave the studio. studio and hang out. I had fun at the studio, and then I ran to another gig.
Gotcha. Good for you.
The thing that was weird about my career was that, and this is a thing I've told people before, when I was a kid, my dad said, if you believe you can do anything, I never realized that anything was not the same as everything. So I did game shows and movie promos and regular commercials and narration. I did every single thing that I could possibly get my hands on. I just did it. If they asked me to do it, I say, sure, I try it, and I did it. So it was weird. I was very busy, but again, I had many kids and big bills, so I was happy about that. But I think we had one guy in the show, and I would never mention Hank Garrett by name, but I loved his stories about his career as an on-camera actor, and everybody had great stuff. But there were a couple of stories he told. One was a story about doing stand-up comedy in a nightclub. And the guy was kind of a shady guy at the nightclub. I hope I'm not bringing anything up there. But he basically said that at the end of the week, everybody's getting paid, and the band comes up, and the girl singer comes up, and he's giving money to these guys. And Hank walks up, and the guy says, I need the rest of that money. Let me write you a check. And Hank's going, I know this guy's probably kind of got some shady stuff going. So he said, I'll go to my hotel and get my luggage and come back. The guy says, no, take the check. And he's going, no, that's okay. I can wait. I'll come back. He's got to take a blankety blank check. So the joke is he takes the check, and the check is good, but the cash, not so good.
Wow.
That presidential face that looks a lot like Zartan. But anyway, it was weird. So, but the whole group of people was wonderful. Is when you sat down, people told stories about their history and their life, and it was just like kind of a whole wonderful bit of stuff like that. Great stories from their background, from where they came, their neighborhoods, how they got into the business. It was just kind of a whole group of people that we were always so busy that many times you just didn't have time to talk. So that was wonderful just to hang out. It was great.
So you guys were all kind of in the green room while the people that were actively recording were in the other room.
On the couch across. We're on the couch across from Wally's office.
Yeah. And you guys would just switch in and out as Wally kind of called on you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because the ensemble was really great because you not only did you get Wally's direction, but you played off each other, and that also made it fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
There's my buddy Neil. Okay, yeah. Good man.
I love that Neil shows up at conventions in cosplay, as should.
Yeah. Oh no, Neil's awesome. We hung out a lot together. Both studied with some of the similar people, and again, most of these people you'd run into a lot, and because we were busy, the time you had to socialize would be when you were going from session to session, hanging out and stuff, and in waiting rooms and things. So that was it's one of those things that's the saddest part about our business is because of social media. Now with the sequester even more, but everything's changed so much that everybody can work from anywhere, and that means you don't hang out with each other as much, and that's kind of sad. Another one, I would go to my agents, and you'd have all these guys who are actors who are doing voiceover who had worked the Catskills and done comedy, and they would tell the best jokes in the world. And you go to your agent, and I had one guy at my agent's office who was a character actor who no one would remember my name, but he was the last second banana to the original James West on Wild Wild West. And Charles lived across the street from Buddy Hackett, great comedian who also played the sea
Love Bug.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, I love Bug. There you go. Yep. So you would tell a joke. I'd tell a joke to Charles, and he'd come back the next day. We'd be waiting for an usher. He'd say, I told a joke to Buddy last night. And he said the joke would be a lot funnier if the punchline was the original punchline. Then he'd do the original punchline, and it would be funnier, right? And then or I tell a joke, and he'd go back and he'd say, I told Buddy the joke, and he said, yeah, that's the joke. That's the way it's written. But it'd be a lot funnier if you did this punchline. He'd rewrite the punchline, and it would still be funnier. It was great. We don't get to do that anymore. It's kind of sad, My insurance salesman, Nick, does really bad jokes. He won't give me a free Maserati with my insurance anyway. So there. So, yeah. I'd even sell for a Lamborghini. I mean, I'm reasonable, right?
So Robert,
You're negotiable.
Robert, to your point about the bridge layer, thanks for checking out the cartoon. Ben said that was the only time that Toll Booth was ever in the cartoon. So there's a little piece of trivia for you. Brian, did you know the guy that played Toll Booth? It was a short career.
Yeah, he was memorable as no, I don't remember. Sorry.
I don't know the guy.
What's really sad is that after that episode, neither did his agent. But that's another story.
Well, he got hit crossing the road.
Was he in one of the miniseries then? Because I do remember him in another scene.
Oh yeah.
Outside of like one of the jungle temples.
Did he have some dialogue?
No.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Got a cameo.
You could ask me what's the smallest role that I ever played. That'd be a
Okay,
good
there you go.
question.
Hey Brian, what is the smallest role you ever played?
Well, it's just really no, it wasn't. It was one word, and they auditioned all sorts of people at the voice caster, and the actual part was I said, thanks, but I padded my part so that, and before I did that, while the other dialogue was going on, and it was supposed to be like a real life situation. So the additional stuff I did was like, thanks. There you go. I beat out 50 people for that, baby. All right.
Wow.
Anybody with half a brain could have done that, but hey, I was glad to take it. Yeah.
I'd like to ask my pet question now, if I could, which is, I always ask this of all the performers we have on the show. Is there a role that you didn't get or a role that you turned down that you just eternally lingers in your mind?
There's one that I turned down, and again, it was because of having a family with little kids. It was back when I was going out for on-camera stuff, and the director said, "Really like your stuff, really great." He said, "And the good news is that while we're doing the scene with the girl, it won't really be you. We'll just take a tight close-up of your face while she does what she does." And I went, "Okay, thanks. That's nice to know that." And I didn't do that one, which is good. I still have a family. I really wanted to be in Fraggle Rock in the worst way. I was a Henson fan, and I really, really, And I also, in one of my classes, I had a lady named Erin Oscar who has passed away, but she was the original Janice in the Muppet Show, and she used to talk about going to England and working for them, and it was a marvelous experience. So I really coveted that. But it's one of those deals. You don't get what you want; you get the right stuff that you were meant to do. So in the end, am I happy with what I got? Dang straight I am. Yeah.
Good.
Cool. So but that was the one that. Sorry.
So Brian, your old friend Skinny Joe fan's tuning in, and he wanted me to tell you hello, Pants.
Thank you, Ted. We are no longer friends after that ad lib, dude. It was Skinny Joe who talked me into doing the Little Shop of Horrors song about being a dentist as Dr. Mindbender, which we did. He was gonna try to do something on YouTube with it visually, which never happened. But I still have the song and take it to cons and stuff and show it because it turned out kind of fun. So I will send you a bootleg.
It might still happen, but Skinny's always got a bunch of projects cooking, and sometimes they take a few years to get out there. So it could very well still happen. Shout out to Skinny for always putting time and energy and effort into G.I. Joe.
Man, he's great. Yeah, we love him. Cool.
I just showed that the Little Shop of Horrors, the dentist video. I just showed that to my daughter. She got a Venus flytrap.
Ooh.
And so I was like, "Oh, you have to see, Little Shop of Horrors." And so, she got as far as the dentist, and she was out. Not for her.
That's great. And they're even, it was originally a Roger Corman film in the first place. And
oh yeah.
And so this may be hearsay, but I was told that when the movie was made was early enough that sometimes his stuff was done so quickly and inexpensively that they didn't actually have ownership of the thing before it got out. So that when the idea to release the remake happened, because it was originally his project, is they went all over Hollywood before to be able to find an original copy and get it registered so that he got credit for doing it. That's rumor. That's totally rumored. So that could be a totally false story.
Wow.
Sounds totally logical to me.
Okay. Someone's going to combine break my lips now for saying that. I don't know, but okay. Yeah.
So Brian, where are you going to be showing up coming up? What shows do you have? I mean, I know it's a crazy time and all shows are tentative at best.
Well, the best thing is for me, it looks like I'm going to share a booth with a friend who's got a podcast as a favor in Salt Lake City in the fall. The G.I. Joe convention and toy show is still on, as far as I know, in September.
Sweet, Joe Fest. Yeah.
And I'm showing that. I signed a contract and everything. I told them I'm going to come by. I got myself my own like little kind of screen that you can see through and stuff. The why you'd want to see my face, I do not know. But yeah, that's cool stuff. I'm totally excited about that.
Awesome. I'll be there. I look forward to seeing you again.
Cool. And the only other one that I'm committed to is Denver's Pop Culture Con, which will be in May of next year. Postponed, but that's been exciting too. So
Awesome.
they keep having people back that they like, and for some reason they like me. I think it's because I pick up after my toys are left all over the room. Look at that! You got yourself a pooch in the back of the room.
I got 2 wiener dogs right here, man. They're not usually,
Woo-hoo!
they don't usually do cameos. So I wasn't gonna bring this up, but since you mentioned them, Brandon, you have a wiener dog too,
I
don't
was
you?
just gonna say, next week should we both bring our wieners?
I will hold mine up if you hold yours up.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
I cannot even go there. I will not even go there. Okay.
Oh, you're coming
Okay.
back for that, Brian.
Can we start the show again? Can we start the show again?
And now back to G.I. Joe.
Oh, there you go. Let's go. Segue.
So Brian, I had a question too. Like, was there any real difference between recording for the episodes, the episodic shows, versus the movie? Was there any difference at all? Was there a different production, or was it just kind of same old, just for a different form?
Yeah, it was Wally, so there was a lot of same old about it. The only thing that was different is that many of us were all excited about working with some of the celeb guests, and of course, we never saw the celeb guests. But hey,
You and Don Johnson didn't go out for drinks or anything?
Nah, no, none of that stuff. Sergeant Slaughter was nowhere near us, Okay. That happens literally all the time with celebs. They're busy doing other stuff, and I get that. That kind of is one of those things,
Yeah, but then
you
you miss
miss
out. Then you miss out on riffing on each other, though.
Yeah, and sometimes I think celebs. I've done a couple of things in my life where I was connected with celebs. I did the Ben Stiller show, and not Neil Ross. Greg Burson and I did some announcing stuff for the Ben Stiller show, and we would get voiceover guys who did cartoons. We would go into the sessions and ad-lib stuff, and they kept saying, Andy Dick would say, no, just read the way it's written. Shut up. Quit that. Just read it the way it's written, and then go home. It's like, we're the funny guys. You're just the voice guys. I said, okay. But we did the show. It was fun.
You got scolded by Andy Dick? Wow.
I don't know. There's a name thing going on there, but I don't know what it is.
No, he lives up to that name.
I love this. I love this segment. It's violent and everything. Look at this. Ooh. Cool. It'd be a good time to promote the video game because I see these kind of like Middle Eastern warriors. So we do the gratuitous video game plug here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Okay. 2.5 years ago, I did a promo for a video game release that's part of the Japanese Dark Souls series. It's one of those deals where you think G.I. Joe got things violent going on in your kid's mind. And so I did a promo for the release of a game called Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. And lo and behold, about a year later, I was called, and they basically said they liked the performance on the promo, and it was kind of funny because it wasn't my LA agent that booked the promo; it was my local Denver agent. And but they hired me for the video game, which turned out to win last year as Game of the Year and Action Adventure Game of the Year.
There you go.
And so it's weird. So the two things that I get the most reaction for when I mention G.I. Joe, people come running across the floor. And if I mention Sekiro, even in the store to somebody, because being a middle-aged guy, it's like the one thing in the world that you don't want to attract is like, I don't want to attract college-age boys, but that's what they come over with. What? Sekiro? What? You're just and it's like, great. But
That's awesome.
It's neat to have done, been in stuff that's legendary from the past and have some current stuff going on as well. And that's pretty awesome. So,
Congratulations.
So great. Yeah.
Very cool.
What would you say are the differences? We actually had another voiceover talent on the show that did some video games and was talking about the non-linear nature of recording video games, how you just record a ton of dialogue and you don't get to do it ad-libbing off of people. Like, what would you say are the pros and cons of kind of video games versus linear television film storytelling?
Well, and that's true. It really depends upon the people and the game involved, especially since the technology has gotten to the point where now, if you do ad lib, even though they've done a lot of the game animation earlier, now they have programs that will change the lip flap if necessary. So you really can do more of that than once upon a time. But it is a different discipline. But in itself, it's kind of neat. It means you have to really get into your head into what's going on. Of the moment, and so you kind of like build scenarios in your mind about what's going on, even if it doesn't turn out to be anything like the game. So I really like the process because it's a very creative, internalized process of you doing the acting stuff. And I when I teach people, I do a lot of that kind of stuff where you can create in your own mind's eye all sorts of wonderful things that can help your performance. And I kind of use that being sequestered from reality thing. And so I found it really neat and empowering and stuff. And they just gave me basic stuff about the character, and then we did a bunch of stuff. did a bunch of lines, and so it's a different challenge, but in itself, it has its own kind of like special place, you know, kind of cool.
I have to say, as somebody who spends his days writing dialogue for video games, which I do,
Yeah.
I literally fill out spreadsheets, and I've always wondered how could somebody ever read this, because it's like literally I fill in spaces like generic greeting or anger noise, or and it's non-linear, and it's I can't imagine having to deal with that as a creative person trying to like put a voice to that, because it's so scattershot sometimes.
It's a different challenge. There was a play in Los Angeles for years called Tamara, and it was one of those weird things where you actually was staged in a building, so you would follow a character into a room, and there would be 3 people with a lead actor who was doing dialogue either with themselves, or to another actor, and you'd be like 3 feet away, and they'd close the door and you couldn't leave till that scene was over. Then you'd follow somebody else, and you could go back to that play, you know, a dozen times, and it would be a different play because you followed different people. And it was all timed perfectly, so there'd be times that everybody would be together in a common room, and then people would split off. It was fabulous. So it's kind of like taking that backwards, re-engineering that thing in your mind. So the challenge is to take something and make something out of it that's relevant. Dawes Butler did a really great thing about text versus subtext, which we really like. Oh, we're being continued? Oh, that's good. We'll be back. So and he basically said on his honeymoon, his wife looked at him at one point, and she looked at him and she said, I hate you. I really hate you. And of course, what she really means is you're really cute. I really love you. You're really funny. So subtext versus text, that's a challenge. And so when you guys write good stuff that we can, you know, bounce off of and go different places, then it's a question of just improvising different things and moods. I can give you 2 or 3 different varieties, and if one of them works when we see the finished product, that's kind of cool, because it's like a magical thing that's reinvented when you see how it's used. It's kind of neat. Yeah, I love it.
So when you're doing a video game like that has this kind of spreadsheet and all these various things that you have to read for non-linear, you know, kind of instances, but is there a director that's guiding you through it, or is it literally just you and an Excel spreadsheet?
So there is the part where you're out there doing the adventure. There's the creative part where you have no direction and you're trying to make something out of nothing. And then if you get the gig, then you go back to where they then pull you in and then guide and direct that. So there are 2 different kind of rhythms in there, again, both interesting. So the adventure is to try to get somebody to get you back for the second thing. On that particular game, it was interesting to me that I have a studio around me with pro microphones and mixers and all sorts of great stuff. And every engineer in LA liked me on one particular kind of microphone, on my Sennheisers, and I have a couple of them. And so when we did the video game, it was like, we only do the Neumann. And the Neumann, of course, was originally created. The original Neumann design was for Adolf, so it would make his voice sound warmer and more full. Okay, but the U87 is pretty much the standard. And so and they said, we won't work on any other microphone. All our actors have to be on a Neumann. I didn't have one. So I didn't actually make money on the show because I had to buy the microphone afterwards for the next gig, which hasn't come along yet. But probably, you know, but yeah, that's part of the deal too. That's part of the adventure. But I do love having a director, and it's a nice, great 2-way street too. So they tell you what you want, you give them like several different takes of what they want, and then in the process, if you really enjoy what you're doing, you throw in some things that are a little bit off the wall. Dawes would say that it's like playing pool. You give something, you want to get the ball in the pocket, but every once in a while you do a reading where you use a little English so it kind of goes in a different way into the pocket so that it's different. If you do the same thing as everybody else, it's boring. So you kind of try to find a way to make it your own with a little bit of stuff. And I've had people really critique me badly for having said that. But I think it's, again, part of the adventure is to try to make magic out of what's just imagination in the middle of the air. And so that sheet is great because it gives me latitude to play with some direction.
Nice. Well, you've had 40 years to perfect your trick shots.
Taking time out for bathroom breaks and meals, of course, yes.
Sure.
And 8 kids.
And well, yeah, there's, again, bad cable service. What can I say? Yeah.
8?
8, yes.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie Tuna I was working in LA radio when I got married, was driving out of town on my honeymoon, and Charlie Tuna was doing bad humor. And so he's saying, I don't know how they're going to have kids because Brian's afraid of the dark and Carla won't go to bed with the lights on. Okay, there you go. Or is that, the other one is like, I think it's Carla, Brian's wife is like hard of hearing because Brian will say, you don't have sex or what? And she'd say, what? But never mind.
I'll take that as a yes.
So
yeah.
Let me ask you this. So when you're trying to come up with a voice, do you go somewhere, just sit and listen to people? Like when you need to recharge that kind of creative energy, like where does that come from? Is it sitting in an airport and listening to conversations? Is it just watching a particular movie that always kind of regenerates that battery within you? Like where do you go when you're searching for what that sound is going to be?
It's a little of all of those things, and part of it is having that love for hearing the music of a voice. And also early on, I was talking with a young lady who's been studying with me today. Early on, you look at the world like it's a candy store. I could use any voice for anything, but I call it copy CSI. You look at the words and you get clues from the words. Okay. And you have to make some decisions, like with comedy, are you going to play it with it, or are you going to play against it? Those are decisions that you have to make. So some things kind of just come out of your gut level, but a lot of it also is picking up on clues, picking up on stuff that would possibly work. And I sometimes, if I'm with somebody and I'm auditioning by myself, I try to give them 3 different viable options that I think would work. If I'm with somebody else, and I try to like listen to them, and I'll do something. And on occasion, this is a secret that no casting director should ever hear, which is good because no casting directors will actually listen to us, right? And so the deal is sometimes I'll take a chance and I'll basically try a little call shot pool thing that gives me like a little escape. And that is, I'll say, I have an idea. I know what you're asking for. And I think I'm hoping I'm there. If you want me to try some more, I'll do that. But I have an idea that's maybe a little off the wall. I'd like to try it. If you don't like it, that's okay. But can I give you something that I think might work? Because that gives me an opportunity to let them know that I'm thinking about the character and that I'm interested enough in the character to come up with something. It also lets them know that I'm willing to take a chance. And if I blow it, it gives me an out. Give me that. So we do that from time to time. Yeah.
Well, your secret's safe here, because if you want to reveal a secret and make sure nobody knows it, this is definitely the show to do that.
Okay. That's good. Right. That was like, you could have done that on, he's not with us no more, so you could have done that on any show that Alan Thicke was on. Same deal. Yeah, but anyway. Okay. Sorry, Alan. Okay.
Well, so we definitely, Brian, we do appreciate your time. We're so glad that you came on and joined us.
We're done.
We like to keep it nice and quick, just kind of the length of the episode, and just
like the honeymoon. Just like the honeymoon. Thank you. And also, one of the greatest men that I've ever known was Dawes Butler. I hope we have time to tell this quick thing.
Oh, please.
We did a celebration of not only Dawes' life as an amazing character actor. When Hanna-Barbera started, they were going to have Dawes do all the voices. No other man, just Dawes. And he brought Don Messick along and said, you ought to hear this guy. And so they started being the first 2 actors who did everything for Hanna-Barbera until they started adding enough shows that they needed to add more people. When I met Dawes, quite by accident, I became his student. He became my mentor. For years, I told people that he was such an amazing icon to me. I still learned stuff that he taught me then, and that's true. But I said, he also had this amazing, generous heart. When I was first married and dead broke, he said, you're on scholarship. You just come on to class and just show up. And when you can afford to pay, fine. But until then, you're on scholarship. So we had this big group of people. We had Nancy Cartwright. We had Bill Farmer, Goofy. And I'm leaving out marvelous, wonderful actors who are good friends that I should mention for the next half hour, how great these people are. Very successful people, all Dawes students. And one by one, after I got up and told how much I appreciated this man and what a great man he was and how generous he was to me, everybody came up and told their story of when Dawes told them, you're broke, you're on scholarship. And he did it for everybody. Wow. So he never had the talent he had. That was remarkable. Yeah.
Wow.
I give him credit for that. And there's a whole lot of careers that are successful today. Corey Burton, among others. A lot of careers today because of people who learned wonderful techniques from Dawes and also learned about the generosity of the man. It was cool.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I love hearing stuff like that. Thank you very much.
Me too.
Guys, it's been a great experience. I was going, let's do another 6 hours. What do you say?
Well, honestly, Brian, we should have you back on an episode that Dr. Mindbender is a part of.
Crazy idea.
You could do that. Yeah. Just don't make me wear the leotards. Never again the leotards.
Well, you're not invited without the silver cod piece, so just get ready. But no, really.
There's always
the name Silver Cod Piece.
Okay, that was all. It was mixed together, but there was something really good in there. What's the deal? What?
Tom, didn't you dance into the name Silver Cod Piece?
Good. It is a good band name, isn't it? It's a great band name. Unfortunately, yeah. It's like, yeah, but okay. So after Aerosmith disbands, it's got to be, it would be perfect for Steven Tyler. Oh, by the way, I did see a concert that they put in a movie theater, and I looked at it, and I swear to you, not only was it musically fun, but the dude really does look like a lady. Okay, it didn't work. Dang, it didn't
I
work.
expected a squeaker.
I'm taking you back.
Your dog must have got a hold on it. All right, so I know we're going to circle back, and we are going to do G.I. Joe the movie, right, Robert Atkins?
Yeah.
That's in the plans. So I'll just go ahead and I'll first it. If anybody wants to second it, Dr. Mindbender for the movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please come back and join us. Please come back and join us.
Thank you, guys. You got a deal.
Thank
You got a deal. Okay. Cobra forever. G.I. Joe really sucks, so don't say anything to anybody. Bye, everybody. Okay.
All right, sign off.
Thank you very much.
G.I. Joe Declassified. Thank you, Brian, for joining us. You are a blast, man.
Absolutely.
We'll see you at Joe Fest, and we'll have you back for the movie, man. Look forward to talking with you some more.
Okay.
See you next week.
Good night, all. See
Yo,
ya.
Joe.
Night, Mom.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe.